Hi, my name is Georgina Burford-Taylor and my candidate number is 0028. Case study today will be on the displacement of the Rohingya. The Rohingya are a Muslim ethnic minority currently residing in Myanmar. They have been said to be one of the world's most persecuted minorities. The Burmese government have been severely restricting the rights of the Rohingya as outlined by the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, specifically Article 15, the right to a nationality. This has led to the displacement of 240,000 Rohingya in the region. The Burmese government have also been restricting the access of the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, the UNHCR, and other refugee aid agencies in the region. This has created worse conditions for the displaced, meaning that they are leaving the country in order to find asylum in others. The UNHCR defines a displaced person as someone who has left their community or country due to conflict or persecution. An internally displaced person is someone who has left their community but has not left the borders of their country. A displaced person is an externally displaced person is someone who has left the borders, who has left their community, who has left the borders of their country and is referred to as an asylum seeker. The data that exists on this case are from international sources such as the UNHCR and other reputable news agencies such as the New York Times and the British Broadcasting Corporation. This means that the data that exists on the case is quite legitimate. However, numerical estimates of the Rohingya refugees are quite low as they serve as estimates. The main stakeholder of the case are the Rohingyans. They are facing persecution and instability and struggling to gain access to even their most basic human rights. The actors of the case are the national Myanmar government, the regional surrounding countries, the regional intergovernmental organization, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, as well as the international agency, the UNHCR. The interpretations vary between actors and stakeholders. The Rohingya are facing persecution and are desperately attempting to find a safe country to seek asylum. The Myanmar government believe that they have autonomy of the state, and therefore what they are doing to the Rohingyas is up to themselves. The surrounding countries may not agree with the persecution of the Rohingya by Myanmar. However, due to the sovereignty of the state, they cannot interfere and instead are left with the displaced people. The intergovernmental organization ASEAN has similar perspective as the regional countries, as they are left with dealing with the displaced people and may not be able to interfere in the sovereignty of the state. The UNHCR views the issue as highly important, requiring global governance and large interdependence in the region in order to solve. They believe that the lives of the refugees must come first and that there must be available access to refugee camps. Other interpretations of the case are realists opposed to a global governance approach who believe in the autonomy of the state and Myanmar, liberalists who are in favor of interdependence and believe that the refugees should be able to be accepted into national cultures and societies in the region, and the application of the cosmopolitan theory and the belief that people are universally a part of community and the moral values of the community must be upheld. They would believe that the Rohingya refugees should be accepted into any other national society and that the persecution in Myanmar should end immediately. This is an example of the global political challenge of borders. It not only impacts the sovereignty of the surrounding nations due to the forced movement of the minority between international borders, but the power and legitimacy of those countries, the regional intergovernmental organizations, and the international community in regards to acting to control the crisis. The political issues of human rights and violence manifest themselves in the case as a root cause of the conflict and persecution. However, I will focus on how the movement of the Rohingya corrodes the sovereignty of the surrounding nations and to what responsibility the international community has to intervene and control the situation. A case similar to this is the persecution of the Darfurian citizens of Sudan by a government-sponsored militia. Beginning in 2003 and lasting until 2012, this led to the displacement of 2.3 million people out of the country into mainly the neighboring Chad. The actors were very similar to this case with the national government, the UNHCR, as well as other refugee aid agencies, and therefore the responses of these actors can be applied to the crises of the Rohingya in order to determine possible viable solutions. The responses to the case have been on a national, regional, and international level. Regionally, the surrounding states, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand, are not signatories to the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, and therefore have no legal obligation to accept the asylum seekers. Initially, Malaysia and Indonesia were turning away boats with asylum seekers that had entered their waters. This was met by a response from the UNHCR condemning their actions. The foreign ministers of Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand then met on May 20th, 2015 to discuss the situation and released a statement saying that they would provide humanitarian assistance to 7,000 refugees provided that the resettlement and repatriation process be done in 1 year by the international community. This was met again by a response from the UNHCR praising their actions and urging for more interdependence and global governance on the issue in the region. The response can be analyzed as demonstrating the political power of the international community and how liberalist ideals growing in international relations manipulates in national interest until submitting sovereignty as a state is regarded more highly than being faced with international criticism. It shows that global governance impacts the global political challenge of borders and the fate of those displaced, as well as the sovereign right of the states who are having to accept the refugees entering their region. The 3 states also called for an emergency ASEAN meeting on irregular migration in the Indian Ocean. The response from the region was the attendance of 20 governments and international agencies to the meeting on May 29th at Bangkok. Myanmar responded nationally, stating that they would not attend the meeting if the word Rohingya was used or if the Rohingya were referred to specifically. This limited the power that the ASEAN has to intervene. The response can be analyzed as demonstrating how national interest can potentially influence decisions made in intergovernmental organizations. This concept threatens the legitimacy of the organization and the political power that they have to intervene in situations that are involving their own sovereignty or the other countries in the region. This case study has social and political impacts on the primary actors in the case. Regionally, it has politically impacted ASEAN as it shed light on the inadequacy of the intergovernmental organization to control the situation. They have allowed Myanmar to go unchecked, persecuting the Rohingya, and they have also been having a lack of affirmative action on the issue specifically. Internationally, the UNHCR has had restricted access to Myanmar and Bangladesh, which has limited the power that they have on the situation and their ability to intervene. This political impact shows that their legitimacy is slightly corroded as they cannot interfere with the sovereignty of the state. They have reported themselves that they need to increase their presence in the region and work with more of the regional countries in order to act positively to prevent the situation from happening. It demonstrates the lack of political power an international agency specifically associated with the UN has when sovereignty of a nation is in question. Nationally, the government of Myanmar has faced potential social impacts. They have been scrutinized and condemned in the eyes of the international community, and this could potentially impact any trade alliances or partnerships that they have in the future, then having a political impact. If the issue continues, demonstrating how global governance can corrode the idea of traditional state sovereignty and the autonomy of the state to act against their own people. The Rohingya have also faced social impacts. Many of the countries that they have been migrating to, such as Malaysia, have not been assimilating them into the national society. An example in Malaysia of this is the fact that Rohingya cannot gain access to education or employment. The issue has continued, with the displacement of the Rohingya unceasing, and their continuous movement into the states in the region. The issue may change as of May 2016, as this is 1 year from when Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand released a statement that they would require the international community to repatriate and resettle the Rohingya that they have accepted into their society. Depending on how the international community reacts, the Rohingya in the countries currently could either face dire or positive consequences. It seems that Myanmar as a state will not change the position against the Rohingyas and will continue the persecution and the restriction of their human rights. This could lead to more and more Rohingya displaced people entering the regional countries, and if the international community is acting to assist the regional countries, the Rohingyas may see it as a way out and therefore further increase the influx of displaced people. The case studies clear links to violence and human rights as the origin of the problem in Myanmar. However, also demonstrates the power of state actors, the corroded sovereignty of nations, as well as the legitimacy of intergovernmental organizations and international organizations in a case of sovereignty. This case is a manifestation of the global political challenge of borders, as it has impacted the sovereignty of surrounding areas and become a global issue involving many actors on many different levels. The mass movement of the displaced from Myanmar has not only created regional impacts, but has impacted significant implications for the international community as well as the international agencies such as the UNHCR. The case is significant as it marks the beginning of a new era of refugee crisis. According to the UNHCR, globally 1 in every 122 humans is now either a refugee, internally displaced, or seeking asylum. Europe has already been subjected to the pressure of the refugees from Syria, and this raises the question, will the global community be forced to work together to finally find viable solutions for this drastically and increasingly important issue? Thank you.